Silent Hill 2 Remake is coming out on Tuesday, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm super excited for it. This is a very influential game with a soundtrack that impacted a lot of not only my music, but a lot of my life in a lot of ways. And so to celebrate that, I wanted to make a couple of videos off of the iconic music that Silent Hill is known for. So I think that I'm going to do this in a two-part series. On the first video, I think that we're going to cover the more musical side of Akira's work. And then on the second video, I think that we can do the more industrial and the dark and the evil side of things, which they're not actually too different. They just kind of require different processing. I will be using some expensive plugins on this, but I can show you some workarounds or talk about what you actually need and what you don't need. That way you don't need to go out and buy things if you're on a budget, or if you're just trying to like take inspiration from this video, in which I want to make it very clear that I'm taking inspiration from the games and not making something that's exactly the same. So with that, we need a drum break, which we're going to be opening up with, and we will be doing some processing to that. Then we'll make some pads, and then we'll kind of put an idea together, and then we can wrap up the video. But if you have an iPad, I already have a video on how to make Silent Hill pads on the iPad, which is not narrated, but I show you all the steps and stuff. So, you know, if you're somebody that's on mobile or whatever, you can do that too. All right, so what would be awesome is if you could like and subscribe. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into the process. So we're gonna just make a drum break from scratch. And with trip hop drums in general, I think that if you have something that's less transient focused and more roomy, then that can help out a lot. So we can pick a random kit from this. You can also just grab a loop or sample one from YouTube if you like. Making acoustic style drums is possible, but this video would probably be extremely long just to try to emulate that. And for the sake of trying to focus on the celebration of Silent Hill, I'm not going to be covering like how to do this, how to make your own drum that sounds like a real snare or something like that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just pull up a kit. And I think what we'll do is just find something that's kind of roomy, kind of like so, and find something like a dirty room, and let's see what that sounds like. I'm not going to be too picky with this because it doesn't matter. It's more about the processing that we'll be doing, which there are quite a few steps, but having something to start with could be helpful. So it's actually not bad. So what we'll do is we'll come over to the mixer, and within this, there's probably a couple of reverbs on this that I just want to reduce this on. So we're going to pull this down. Actually, what we'll do is back off of these guys. So kick to reverb. Where's this reverb thing? So we'll open this up, and I am just going to turn the decay down a little bit. The dampening is already up. All this stuff is all right. And what we can do with that is to kind of just try to control it to where it has some room, but not a ton. Cool. Now let's go ahead and talk about patterns, which what we'll do for this is start with just a single bar. And what I want to do is, like, whenever I think of Silent Hill, usually the first song that comes to mind is Alone in the Town. And so what we want to do is think about taking a piece of percussion, usually a hat or something, and we can kind of just create a nice kind of pattern that we would start here, and then we can kind of move everything off. So do. Okay. Now this is pretty straight, and what we want to do is kind of create just a little bit of swing. So what we can do is just grab every other one and kind of do something like this. And then on this one, we can actually do a roll right here where this is a perfect triplet. Where this, if you're familiar with my channel, we don't want to do something that's like necessarily a halftime, but we want to give it just a little bit of groove here to where it's kind of has a shuffle. So now what we can do is hit a couple of these, and we can place the kicks and the snares along the piece of percussion. So I do want to tune that snare, so we probably will be doing something like that, but let's go ahead and just kind of back off of that. And then we can kind of grab something like this and move that off. So we can make the kick on this one a little bit harder because that's on the downbeat. And then this one can be hard as well. So then we can kind of just drag this kick and make that a little bit softer. And now with all the other stuff that we have, we can kind of just color it in. So if we have kind of like a ride, kind of like so, then what we can do is take every other one. And I want to have just another one right here to kind of like that. So with this one, I'm going to pull off of that. So that way we've got a little bit of variation. And now we've got a nice little drum groove. And then I want that kick to be a little bit later. So maybe like there. And then something that I'm hearing now that we're kind of getting this groove together is maybe something that has a little bit of a roll right here. So we can kind of take something that maybe we could use something like a tom. So, but we kind of want to swing it. So. And maybe not a tom because that doesn't sound good to me, but we can kind of move. Cool. Now with this snare, what I want to do is play around with the tuning to see if I can make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to turn it down a bit. So yeah, this sounds pretty good. Something that we can do with all of these is we can go Command A, I think, or I think that maybe if we hold Shift, yeah, then we can just click on this one and then hold Shift and go to all of these. And now what we'll do is we'll go to the tails of this and kind of just reduce this just a little bit. So now I want these hats to be a little bit louder. Oops. And also the overhead's a little bit louder as well. There we go. Now from this point, once you have something like this, I'm going to talk about the processing from here, but the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this twice as fast. And it's going to make sense here in a little bit because I actually want two different versions of this, but you can go and process all of these individually if you want to. I'm not actually going to do that. What I will do is add a little bit of glue compression. I like my drums to be a little bit bigger, but I want to be somewhat subtle with this. So with this, if you have like Ableton's glue compressor or something of the sort, or any compressor I think will work, but long attack, long release. Actually, because we're doing the entire drum bus, we probably want to back off of the attack and release. If you're doing single drums, then you want to have more attack and slash release because they're a single hit, but because everything is together, we kind of want to not be so hard on it. And then what I'll do is I'm going to push this up to where it starts to sound like it's breaking and then back off of the mix. So and then usually I'm shooting for like 8 to 12 dB of gain reduction. So I know that this sounds ridiculous at the moment, but because of that, we can start to grab an EQ. And I do want these hats and symbols and stuff to be a little bit brighter, so we're going to back off the kick just a bit, and I'm going to use a little bit of dynamic EQ to just pull off of the fundamental of the snare. And this is all preference, by the way, so and then what you can also do is if you want to add some coloration to it, you can kind of just listen to it and focus on little peaks and dips. And then you can kind of just color it in that way. So lastly, we're going to add some clipping. So usually I like to go for newfangled saturate, and kind of work from there. Now, if you want to make this a little bit tighter, you can try to focus on a little bit of transient shaping reduction. So you can just pull the sustain down just a little bit and pull off of that. So or if you want to make it more roomy, you can pull the transient up. Doesn't really matter. Once we have something like this, the reason why I actually made it twice as fast is because now what we'll do is I am going to bounce this track out, kind of like so. And I'm going to take both of these and make it twice as long to where now it's at the original tempo. But what I'm going to do is set this to repitch. And so if you listen to this now, then you have something that's kind of like that. Now, maybe what we can do is change this perhaps to stretch HD, and then instead of making it -12, we can make it like -6. Which, that sounds pretty nice. And something that we might want to consider as well is just backing off of the tail end of this stuff. So, and what's nice is that we can kind of just copy this and duplicate it across the board. So whenever we have that, so but you can see that, you know, depending on how you want to color your sounds, you know, you can leave it like that. We can leave it just in Superior Drummer if you want to have a more natural sound. But when it comes into making those kind of like cool trip hoppy breaks and stuff, there's not really a right or wrong. It's just a matter of like catering to what style that you enjoy and what you're looking for. To me, this sounds just like a little bit too clean, and so sometimes having a little bit of that in between could be helpful. And if you want to go further, then some stuff or some steps that you can take before we get here are doing things like bit crushing. So we can go bit crush, maybe set this to like 12 or start there and see what that sounds like. And then we'll back off the mix. The one thing with this though is that we've kind of lost the rides, and yeah, because with this I want this to be a little bit louder, so maybe we can pull this up on the velocity a little bit more. And then we can kind of let that sit there. And then that overlap is there. So we want those to kind of match up and not be like kind of phlegmy, I guess, if you will. So yeah, next up, what we can do is, um, if for whatever reason you're using a drum break and it's very dry, so let's go drum break, drum loop. We're just going to use this for context. When it comes into adding reverb, you can grab a room, Valhalla room, Pro R2, anything, and you can create a duplicate of this. And on this one, this will be the 100% wet reverb. So we can pull up the high cut and turn the depth up. Then what we can do is grab an EQ, kind of like so, and go like that. And I will say, I forgot to mention, but if you all are wondering, I do actually have another video on this about how to like create your own trip hop drums from scratch and stuff. The one thing that I will say, because we are kind of doing a mixture of both, is that right now I'm using Superior Drummer to like shape everything or whatever, but like some stuff is just kind of difficult to synthesize. So that's where I would say like, all right, this would be the one exception to where I'm like, go grab an acoustic drum and then you can layer it with fundamentals if you want to. But yeah, go watch the other video if that seems interesting. But yeah, so what we can do is mix this signal in now. So and that's just like one thing that you can try. So now that we have this though, what we want to start focusing on is getting into pad creation and whatnot. So and then one other thing that I might like to do is also play with the pitching of this. It's cool, but I kind of want it to be a little bit boomier. There we go. Now, one thing that you can also do if you want all of this to have a little bit of extra crunch is, well, there's a few ways to do this. I'm going to do it in a way that keeps this alive, but what I'm going to do is create a new effect chain. Effect track, rather. And I'm just going to find something that is really dirty. So I'll grab a convolution reverb. And I'm going to send these drums into this. And just solo this for a sec. Now with this, I'll add something like this tube, just any kind of distortion. And just crank this. Now what we want to do is, oops, this is supposed to go here. There we go. Now obviously like that's way crazy, so we need to go into the advanced tab here and we want to take out some of the low end. So then what we can also do is turn this up. Sorry, turn this down to where we're gating this. And now we've got a nice little crunchy layer that we can mix in between this. What we might also want to do is EQ this again. I want to see what this is going to sound like with a fuse compressor. Okay, it's a bit much. There we go. That sounds a bit more natural. Now, as you can hear, the transients and stuff on this are a little bit more punchy than most of these other drums and stuff. If you really want to take out the low end or reduce the transients of the kick, you're more than welcome to do so. But this is kind of just a means to, hey, here's how we can get a dirty drum loop. So now that we have that, let's actually get to some of the fun stuff. And what I'm going to do is probably start making something within D minor, just because that's a really good place to start. And all you really need to do is start with sine waves. So we can do something kind of like this, kind of like so, to where we've got a means of creating like a Rhodes. Right. Now, if we want to make this more dirty, a few things that we can try are, for one, grabbing an LFO, kind of like so, and making this kind of pitch around in a way that has a very slight amount of detuning, maybe something that's less than half of a semitone. And then we can right click this and change this into never. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit louder so that everyone can hear it. But if we utilize this and we grab the gain, yeah, then you've got some really nice stuff to work with. So we can make this a little bit more interesting. And what we can do is add just a touch of convolution to this. And how to make pads and stuff is kind of irrelevant. We just need a pad. But generally speaking, with single harmonics or like less harmonics or things that are heavily filtered and stuff, you can get some really nice, you know, kind of sounds kind of like that. Something else that you can do if you want to focus more on the detuning is you can have multiple voices and then spread them out. So which I actually like that better, to be honest. If you want to add a little bit of colorization to this, we can also do some bit crushing. And maybe something that we can do for fun is grab a random on here. And every bar, this will change into something different. But I'm going to also set this to never retrigger from note on. So that way we're going to have a little bit of variation behind this. That sounds nice. We need to transpose that to D though. So what we will do is, boom, we're going to play D, F sharp. Almost. There it is. So let's go ahead and talk about this chord for a second, because to my knowledge, this is a suspended chord. So we've got a D, we've got an A, we have A sharp. This is what makes a suspended chord. And then we've got an octave. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different than just try to make a chord progression, but if you listen to this, then you kind of already have those really cool and interesting chords that is usually something that's on repeat. And what's really cool about this is if you were to just bounce this in general and have something like that, so where was the last place I fired that off, then you'll see that if you kind of wanted to create a progression by just transposing the chords, you absolutely could. So you could do something like this to where it's like, do maybe an octave, and then do something that's kind of like maybe 5 semitones. 1, 2, 3, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1 down, so. But the timing of this and all that other stuff is kind of irrelevant. It's kind of just a means of being able to transpose it and create eerie stuff, you know, because if you add a bunch of ROM to this in general, maybe we can make this here and then change this just a little bit. Instead of going down 1, we can go up 1, so we can go to the 6th interval. Maybe go up one more. Yeah. Now, this is out of time, of course, it's over the course of 3 bars, but as you can see, what we're creating here is just different eerie motions with this. And so we'll think about, or put this in your pocket, and then we'll come back to this. I am going to keep this chord, but what I'm also going to do is delete this, and we will go into some other cool stuff where I'm going to just set up some live jamming and just hit some stuff that is going to hopefully kind of help us create some different motifs or whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna go start from here, hit record. So within all this stuff here, what I've just done is I just kind of jammed out and played within the confinements of D minor. The thing to consider with this is that, like, if you're familiar with mode changes and all that other stuff, you're more than welcome to do so, but you can just look up the scale of D minor, which is D, E, F, G, A sharp. And then of course I played some incorrect notes and whatever, but that's fine. So now that we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to go into this guy again, and we're going to start to make a couple of changes over time. And the reason why is because when we actually set this to be recording the audio, we want some different flavors of just something that is a sine wave. So I'm going to flip this up instead. That way it's going to be off most of the time. And then what I can do is add in some analog of FM, if you will, just to here by a little bit. And we'll duplicate this and just set this to be a little bit different. Now, what I want to do is I do want this FM to be random, but the problem is that if I have it here and I start to offset this pitch, then it's going to be different. So what I'll have to do is grab an envelope and then set that to here. So now whenever I play this, you can see that we're getting some movement. So the next piece of this to make this work is instead of doing it to the FM amount, I'm actually going to do it to the amount of the envelope. And now over time, the amount of FM is going to be different over each bar. So we can add quite a bit. And then if we wanted to, we could also change up the rate of, or the harmonic of this to a certain amount. What we can also do is add a fifth if we wanted to. Which is pretty nice, but I don't want this to be up all the way. So I'll turn this up to about 50%. And now this will kind of randomize that as well. I'm going to be a little bit sporadic with super heavy amounts of reverb and stuff, but you can go ahead and do that if you want to. So if you are trying to get just a huge array or huge range of sounds, you can play with different delays and pitch shifters and flangers and all that other stuff. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to kind of just try to keep this relatively dry. And then towards the end, that's when I'll add the other stuff. Maybe just for good measure, we could do a little bit of this where I'll duck this and turn the feedback up. So now we've got But I still want to make sure that we have that fundamental there because it's really important, because it's okay if it sounds like that on the beginning, but if we don't have a detectable pitch, then sometimes that could not be good. So now it looks like I forgot to add this in, so we need to bring that back. Nice. So now what I'll do is, we could just listen to this and let it record out, but I'm going to be lazy and just hit J, and this is just going to bounce to a new track. And now what we can do is come into this and kind of just listen back to it. And I don't really care about what the initial pitch is with the D and all that. I just wanted it to have a harmonic relationship. So now we can listen to this, and this is the part to where we can throw this in a sampler and start making changes or do whatever. But what I'm going to do first is just listen to some of it. Like that. That's really nice. So if we were to just take one chord and play this over our drums. So let me grab this here. Let's find that drum loop that we have, which I believe is right here. And change that to this. And just repeat that every 2 bars. Every bar, sorry. Now we can add some reverb. So from this, we can start to harmonize with this and start to get different things or different elements to kind of make this go along. And what's cool is now that we have this, we can play with either doubling it or making it in half while changing this to repitch mode. Because what's going to happen is if we do that, and sometimes fifths and sevenths and stuff, but sorry, thirds and fifths. But what we can do with this is start to play with other things within here that might also sound good. So that sounds really nice. Maybe what we can do is play this together. And we can have this set out, and then on this one we can make this double, so that way it's pitch up, pitch down. So, but we will really want this to be like in the background and behind everything. I can already hear that the pitch is a little bit off, so we might need to find another cut, but or maybe just move this over a bit to where we don't have that first part. So something like, and fade it in. Not quite, but that's actually kind of nice. As you can see, like sometimes the other benefit or even curse of this is that sometimes you might hear other stuff that sounds really good. So if we were to play this like really slow, which I'm going to bounce this because I'm going to change the tempo of this, but if we made it slower and just kind of had something that was we stretch that out to where we can try to make that a little bit more in time. So we need to move this hit a little bit over and make that like this. So and then what we can do is actually take some of this and transpose that. So So really within this, what we're doing is kind of just fishing around for ideas and different hooks and different stuff that we can kind of play around with. But once we find something that has that really strong mood and that really strong pad, or that really strong idea and stuff, then we can kind of just pick and choose. But I actually wanted to back up for a second, because before we even get to chopping and stuff, I wanted to take this into another step to now start applying all of the other things that we have available in our tool set. So what we can do with this is turn this off and go into Beam. And Beam is just a granular plugin. It sounds really cool, actually. But what it is essentially is a mixture between convolution reverb, grain delay, time and pitch mangler, and a filter. But what I can do is just grab something kind of like this and try to focus on setting this to a consistent rate. And if you have Portal or something like that, you can do that too. We'll just grab some octaves and turn the delay on, maybe at like 50%, and grab the spray. But now what we're going to hear are a lot of other different textures behind the octave within this. We might also want to grab some convolution to smooth it out a bit. So the default one is actually really nice. Actually, almost every single one of these are really good. But if we grab something like echoes, see what that does. Because the goal of this now is to try to create something that's going to be lush. Nice. Let's give it a little bit of saturation. Okay, that was really cool. And we might even be able to use something like that last part. Let's see what that sounds like. It's a little bit quiet, but that's okay. And to me, this actually sounds really cool. It might just need a little bit of quantization, but this phrase in particular is something that I'm pretty happy with. It sounds pretty nice. Do, 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 do. And then what we might be able to do is even fade this into itself. That's actually really nice. Maybe we can try to quantize this just a bit. Stretch that out just a hair. Do, 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 do. within this, what we can do is layer this under, because I'm actually starting to like that a little bit better. Let's see what happens if we do that. Let's pitch this up an octave. Oops. So I guess what happened there? I'm going to try Elastic Pro. That sounds pretty sick. Let's go ahead and add something like a delay now. Maybe right there, so. And now from this, all we need to do is kind of just correct it to where we need it to be. So maybe there. And then we can stretch it out just a little bit more, so. Cool. I actually like that a lot. So now what we can do is start focusing on just having a little bit of a bass. And we don't need anything crazy. But if we were to take something that's kind of like a saw wave and give it some filtering. Then we can kind of just let it play out, kind of like so. And then we just need a crap ton of distortion, so turn off the filtering. We can give this a little bit of character if we want to. Or we can also add some movement to this to try to make it seem like it's a little bit more alive. Because sometimes just having something that is static is boring. Maybe a little bit faster. Grab a shaper table. Give this a little bit more distortion. It's pretty nice. We can just play a low D. You can play a melody if you want to, so. One thing I might suggest is coming back into this and going to the polyphony here and turning that down, so. You can do something like that, so. Because that's playing the same kind of melody that we have on that, so. That's actually kind of cool. So we can go. that we have something like that, really what the name of the game is, because I haven't talked about sidechaining or anything, is just finding more material to help make this more alive, more interesting. So I do have a couple of options that we can utilize. The first is if you have some kind of like vocal reverb, then that can help out a lot. If you don't and you have access to convolution reverb and you can put a voice over all of this, then that can sometimes be helpful. So let's attack that avenue first. Actually, no, I'm going to show you like what happens if you put a big sky over this, which I wouldn't recommend going and getting unless if like you have just tons of money to spend. I didn't buy this, somebody got it for me, but this chorale reverb can turn almost anything into like a chord, or sorry, like a choir. That's what I meant to say. But if you listen to this now, which sounds really nice. So we can take that and just place it here for now and maybe mute that. But assuming that you don't have a big and fancy reverb plugin, if you have access to convolution, to which if you have access to Bitwig, then you do, or Ableton, there's also Convolution XT, which is free. But if we can find a vocal, like a choir or something, something of the sort. I might have the voice of an angel on here, which is Corey. He won't take a wake for an hour. Okay, I don't, unfortunately. Corey sometimes is on my songs and sings opera, but I think that's in the rolling sampler thing, or maybe I just haven't saved it. But yeah, if we can find a voice. Just something kind of soft. Okay, fuck it. Let's have some fun. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to sing over this. There we go. So I'm going to just record this in. Nope. Over here. So what we can do with this is, it's okay if it's like off key or whatever, it doesn't need to be perfect, but we can go into this and drag this recording in into this, and now we've got something that's a voice. And because we have that, we might want to play with the pitching and stuff before we throw it in. I'm going to try turning this tune up. But if we go back into this stuff and we solo it and we turn the mix up, we might be able to get something that is kind of like choir-like as well. So that is not what I was expecting. That's really cool though. Okay, so what I'm going to do is turn this off, the bass, and just listen to this. And turn this down as well, because holy cow. There we go. And now what we can do with this is play around with other things like pitch shifting. Let's grab some OTT. Let's spread it out a bit. Just a bit. It's pretty cool. Then we can use a creative reverb like ROM or Pro R, or we can also use Beam again and resample some more. But now listen. That's so pretty. So within all this stuff that we've kind of pulled up, we can bring some of that back in and continue to layer and just turn this rack off. So we'll just go Command G, go like this, go like this, and start to play around with some of these other elements as well. So like that. That's really nice. And we can just use those and use things like that as texture. That was really cool. So if we start with this one, we're just going to add a crap ton of reverb to this and take out the low end. And this should all be just for inspiration, so please don't try to like follow along with what I'm doing, but this is just how to start with something and find a cool path to getting to other neat sounds. I really just want that. Now in this one, we can kind of do the same thing. And we can kind of just listen to this and probably turn it down by quite a bit. Let's grab all of them, turn it down a little bit. And just let this be in the background while the rest of this plays. So now obviously that's kind of a muddy mess, so we need to kind of just mix some of this stuff in and place it in a way that will be tasteful. So you can see the da 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 da. We really don't want to have that collide because that's kind of the main theme or the main call and response of what we have. So this is kind of in the way. Which is kind of nice. But maybe what we can do is move that over to the side. We can just take like a single phrase like this. Duplicate this. And instead of using this, we can add in another thing here. Have that. And have that in a delay. Alright, let's listen to how that sounds. I like this, but let's go ahead and add a little bit of cleanup. once you have something like that, then we need to do a B section. And what could be really cool is to maybe change this into something different, to where we take all of this stuff that we printed and we can toss it into a sampler. So my favorite sound of all of this is this, which is a nice pad. And that's where we can go back into what I was talking about from before, where we can take the whole thing of this and I will drag this into a sampler, set this to be D. And now what we can do is take off of this. So we might be able to do something kind of like that, of like, where you can kind of transpose stuff. And it doesn't have to be this. You can kind of play with some of the other elements that we have. It doesn't really matter too much. I know that we've got quite a bit of material to work with, but just looking for a change, I'm looking for... I actually really like that, so maybe we can use that instead. To where we take this stuff off. I don't have to mute it anymore. So then we can pitch that up an octave. What is this? Something kind of like that, which is okay. But what we have now is something that can transition in between this and kind of just let the drums play. And then over time, you know, if you wanted to, we could also change this. Where we can either add some stuff. So we can go like this and maybe add in a different kind of crash and kind of start mixing this up. Something else that we can do is like add layers into this as well. So maybe what we can do is go in and find just a hi-hat or a few of them. So we're going to want to turn this down to be pretty low though. And for the record, if you want to make your own hi-hats, like these are dirty and dry and stuff, so that works out pretty well. But if you're into doing your own synthesis, then you can just grab a E-hat and grab a bunch of randomizers on everything and just do this. So that kind of works, that last one. So we can kind of take that, let that do its thing. And then we can just kind of create a swung shuffle on this. So like that, we'll make this one late. So let's grab this one, place it here. And we can place that one there. And we can change the dynamics of this just a little bit. Make that one late as well. So I think that this has a little bit too much low end on it. So we really want to try to blend it in as much as possible and match the aesthetic. There we go. And then what we can also do is pitch this down a bit. So also time shift this a little bit late, see if that helps. Some vinyl. Which that should be good. And we can kind of just let that loop. And then now what we would do is we would kind of just try to find some ways to go into the details of making these two sections blend. For example, we might just want to let this play. So like a... So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce these, and then now I can play with the tempo. What's really cool is now that you have this, like, you know, these are just different ways to kind of make your switch ups and stuff. Like, I don't even know if this would be fitting for the song, but this right here is the main piece of this. And if you have like some kind of ghostly, you know, might be kind of cool to add like a square to this. Bandpass square. Like even maybe an octave or something. But really the cool thing about this is like this is the core of the loop, and now it's just a matter of trying to get into harmonization and finding other layers in which to kind of finish out the songwriting process. But the vibe is already there. That a lot. And you can kind of let this unfold over time, you know, so maybe we've got double this section, and then on this one we don't have this guy. Or maybe for the first 4 bars or whatever, because this is 6 bars now, like we start to slowly add this stuff over time, and then we give it that little switch up that goes into kind of like that mysterious and eerie progression. If you have like a piano or something, that could always be super helpful. Not saying that I need to add stuff to this, but it could be kind of cool. And if we did something maybe like the grandeur, see if I can get that to pull up. Oh, that sucks. Okay, so I'm having issues with complete control, so we're not going to use that, but maybe we can find grand piano, something that sounds whatever, close. You know, playing and getting in stuff like that can usually be really helpful, so So some really nice stuff kind of like that, and then you can continue to add to it. But the chords and just having something that's moody like that really plays into all that other stuff. And again, we only talked about like one style of drums, but for whatever reason, if you need more or if you need a different flavor, something else that you can try are a couple of things. On one end, what we might also want to do is to have this here, excuse me, and just play with different kits. So we can try the dirty room. We can also try other roomy stuff and see what that does. It might not work. It might sound really good. You never know. I'm always early. Yeah, so some of these are kind of more so in the means of rock, and that's why I think that you are in other genres, and I do think that it's important to know how to process them because it's not just like you pull up a preset and then you win. At the same time, if there are elements of this that you like, and we like the original drums, then you can kind of just turn this down and use this as an extra layer for hats and stuff. So and then as well, something else that you can do or something else that you can consider if you want more texture is kind of that same thing to where, let's say we go bounce now and we turn these drums down by like 7 and then take out the low end and then obviously like mix them in, but getting into drum layering and stuff. See how we have that really nice right? So you can kind of, this is bothering me, so we can kind of just have something like this. And I'm not going to write the intro and all that other stuff because I wanted to just show you how to get the main idea down. But we can move this over ×2, grab this, move that over ×2. Please Why is that not working? That's annoying. Okay. There we go. Kind of close that up. If you want to elaborate on the drums and make variations, you can, but it's a loop and it's just something like a place to start. But now we've got, you know, an A part, a second A part. You know, I still think that if you have some kind of singing vocal over this, that would be awesome. But who has that kind of recording artist at bay or like ready at hand, right? But you can jam it on piano, you can resample these synths and find other stuff. But and all in all, like this I think is a really cool intro to figuring out how to make this kind of music, even if it's not quite the thing that most people might obsess over are the drums, uh, aka me. But just getting to a starting point and all that stuff could be super helpful and might help you down the road of how to work all this stuff. So, anyways, if this was informal to you, then let me know. If you want to check out how to make trip hop drums from scratch and go into a little bit more detail and stuff, I've got other videos on that. I have a lot of other Silent Hill videos, but obviously this is a huge inspiration for me. And this is just kind of nice to make. It's kind of low, I'd say low effort, and also very casual and very like non-stressful, because it's just kind of like finding a vibe and finding a mood. But take what you can from this, whatever is useful, discard what is not useful, and make your own best judgment. But thanks everybody. Congrats to Konami and Team Bluebird, I think is what they're called, for their latest release. Let me know if you're gonna get Silent Hill. I'm gonna have to watch it because I have an Xbox and a Mac, so I can't play it, but we will be watching the whole thing and seeing what we can do with it. But thanks everybody. I appreciate it, and have a good time. If you want more resources, alchemy.com. See ya.